So what we have is a massive amount of flexibility. We can make renewable diesel or SAF. And obviously we talk a lot about SAF because that's new and it's, associated with a potential DOE loan. And we have a large potential max SAF expansion that will take us from the largest producer in North America to one of the largest, if not the largest in the world. So very excited about that. And SAF gets a lot of coverage, but really early on, we initially launched with almost all renewable diesel, and we were selling to large blue chip companies, and on the SAF side, we're partnered with Shell, who's one of the largest SAF end-to-wing fuelers there is. So what we do is we provide the SPK, which Shell will then take all across the country, even into Canada, blend it. They have the last mile logistics, and then they actually, serve the airline, do the QC, do the last mile terminaling, fueling at the facilities, all of that. And SAF's interesting. It's such a high growth area that at this point it's one airline, one airport at a time in converting. Because
Wow.
when you think about the complexities that are involved in really changing the supply chain into fueling of something as sensitive as and important as an airport, you want to make sure you have it right. So it's really one airport at a time. We sell to Shell. Shell takes it to their facility. They blend it and ultimately inject it into the fuel the airplane.
Wow, it's just amazing. And man, you weren't kidding, Todd. Great Falls, Montana, dude, that is up there. I mean, it's north of Yellowstone National Park. You're just a stone's throw from Canada, so I can't imagine that is just extraordinary out there. Todd, talk to us about like the quality of the fuel. We were just talking to an airlines analyst who was just talking about the need to get greater efficient engines from a fuel efficient perspective. What's the quality and the performance of the sustainable aviation fuel that you guys produce?
One of the things that's so beautiful about both sustainable aviation fuel and renewable diesel is it's really a drop-in fuel. There have been a lot of technologies talked about to help with the energy transition, and a lot of them, particularly in airline, which we think is the hardest to abate of all of the transportation sectors. It requires a change in infrastructure. If you're doing battery fueled, you have to obviously have a completely different plane. Hydrogen's been talked about, completely different engine. SAF, one of the beautiful things about it is it really just drops into an existing supply chain. So it's easy. It works just as well as traditional fuel. Obviously, it's very highly monitored. The QC on it's incredibly important, but molecularly, it's very similar to existing jet fuel that is out there today. So we can just drop it into the same system. There's some blending and QC work that happens kind of there at the facility from Shell, but it's not something like an ethanol or a biodiesel that is able to be blended at very small amounts. It's really molecularly a very similar product to the jet fuel that's being used today. And on the renewable diesel front, in fact, end users don't even have to differentiate. You can use renewable diesel or diesel and not even differentiate between the two. They're molecularly the same.
So when you decided to make this transformation in the last 3 years with this refinery, was it expensive? Did it cost a lot?
Yeah, it costs a lot. And in fact, when we started it, our stock was about $1 in the depths of COVID. So we really went all in on this. We've had a lot of conviction about sustainable aviation fuel, about renewable diesel, and most importantly, I think Montana's competitively advantaged position in that area. So it was a major bet, but we were able to make that decision quickly and actually go from ideation to fully operating in just a few years. So we stood it up at the very end of 2022. 2023 was kind of, we were piecing together the various phases of the startup and commissioning. We worked out the kinks, and in the second quarter of 24, we really demonstrated what a full steady state production can look like at Montana Renewables. So incredibly exciting time.
So who do you compete against? Is there a competition? Is there a market here? Is there a competitive landscape for sustainable aviation fuel?
It's interesting. So every country is a little bit different. in North America, there are really only two suppliers currently. There are a few more that are coming on because obviously this is just a major growth area. But right now, there are only two that are producing. And it's not, at least today, a mandated market. So obviously airlines will make commitments and try to get ahead of the game. They expect mandates to come down the road. Same thing with individual entities. So there's private airlines are a big user. So there's certainly a big market as it exists today. But the incremental supply is actually imported. Now, if you go globally, that's a little bit different. When you go globally, there are mandates. And the UK, for example, just came out and they're going to mandate, nearly a third of a billion gallons by 2030. Singapore, same thing, 150 million gallons by 2030. Japan, India. So there are globally a lot of mandates coming on. And just here in our own, backyard in the United States, we have the SAF Grand Challenge, which says we want to have 3 billion gallons a year of SAF production by 2030 and 35 billion gallons a year by 2050. So, today we're the largest in North America and we're making 30 million gallons to 45 million gallons a year.
Yeah.
So
Todd,
it speaks to just how early we are.